My name is Arjun. I grew up believing that marriage is a promise made not only to a person, but to two families and to a picture of the life you will build together. Ours was an arranged marriage. We spoke for about 6 months before the wedding. Our conversations were steady and polite, never theatrical, never grand. There were no sweeping declarations, just a practical rhythm, two people checking whether their values could live under the same roof. It wasn't a love story told in fireworks. It was a quiet agreement to try. After the wedding in our hometown, we came back to the city where I work. We did not return alone. My mother and my mother-in-law came with us, and the plan was to settle in, help one another, and find a routine together. The flat was small but familiar to me. Work shirts drying on the balcony, the fans rattle when it starts, the same trees outside the window I had watched for years. Now there were more voices at breakfast, more opinions about where the pressure cooker should sit, and a calendar crowded with doctor's appointments and small domestic plans. Those early days were a study in merging habits, how early to wake, how hot to drink tea, which channel to keep on low volume during lunch. We unpacked gifts, wrote down who had given what, placed frame photos, and tried to learn each other's rhythms. I did not imagine that the first real fracture would arrive not with shouting, but with an ordinary Sunday. I did not imagine it would arrive so early, 10 days after we had exchanged garlands, signed documents, and told a room full of relatives that we would take care of each other. One Sunday she went to the office. It didn't raise alarms. Sometimes she went in on weekends and I never questioned it. I stayed home, took my mother to the market, replied to a few emails, and told myself I would rest before Monday. I pictured her at her desk, finishing a task with the bluish light of a monitor on her face. It felt like any other weekend. 5 days later, it no longer felt like any other weekend. That night, while she slept, I picked up her phone. I didn't have a plan. I wasn't trying to catch anyone. I was simply restless and couldn't quiet my mind. The phone opened without effort. I scrolled through the usual mess of notifications, then tapped her gallery and watched a short video my brain tried to reject even while my eyes were still watching it. It was her. It was a colleague from her office. The timestamp and the room told their own story. They had met during her lunch break that Sunday. The clip wasn't long, but long enough to end the person I thought I was becoming in this marriage. There's a kind of silence that arrives when the ground inside you drops away. The fan still rattled, traffic still hummed, but in my chest, everything fell at once. When I confronted her, she denied it. She said the video was old, that it belonged to a past relationship. She said the man I saw was not a colleague but an ex-boyfriend. She said I had no right to check her phone. She said I was overreacting and that many people have pasts, and marriages survive these things all the time. The words came in a careful order, like boxes stacked to block a doorway. I stood with the phone in my hand and a version of my life scattered around my feet. I wanted to believe her. I wanted it to be a mistake of dates and panic and misread details. But something in her eyes seemed to look past me, not at me. I could hear the sentences, but I couldn't find the bridge that could carry me across to trust them. I left the house that night and stayed at a friend's place. I told her parents what I had seen and what she had told me. She called and messaged, asking for another chance, promising there was more to say if I would return and listen. Days later she admitted the truth. The man was a colleague. The meeting was during lunch, and it had happened just 10 days after our wedding. I read her messages, felt my stomach clench, and then turn hollow. 10 days is the smell of turmeric still on your wedding clothes. It's aunties asking if you're eating enough. It's signatures still drying on new documents. 10 days is when you are learning where the cups are kept. 10 days is when you are supposed to be careful with each other. I stayed away for a month. During that time, she and her parents kept asking me to come back and give the relationship another try. They said we were young, that mistakes happen, that families can help carry pain until it becomes lighter. I wasn't righteous during those weeks. I was tired and afraid. At night I walked around my friend's spare room and felt like a guest in a life without walls. I imagined 2 futures. In one I returned and we did the slow work of rebuilding. In the other I told everyone the marriage had failed before it had even begun. Both futures frightened me. It is easier to change your shirt than to change your story. I decided to try. Before I came back, I asked her if she was prepared to leave that job. She agreed. It sounded like a clean boundary. Remove the proximity, remove the reminders, give us a chance. But as soon as I moved back in, reasons began to grow like weeds. First, she said she needed 2 months to serve her notice period. Then she said she would stay 3 months so her 2-year mark at the company would be complete. Each explanation had its own logic. Each also bent away from the promise we had made to each other on the phone. Logic can be a very tidy room for fear to hide in. I tried to hold the line without turning into a policeman. I told her I did not want to track her or patrol her schedule. I wanted us to be 2 adults repairing something fragile. But the images I had seen kept playing in my head without permission. I found myself watching the clock when she was late, reading politeness like code, inspecting the smallest details the way a person checks a locked door a second time after already locking it once. I did not recognize the man I was becoming, half partner, half security guard. One night I searched her cloud drive. I don't say this with pride. I say it because it happened, and because it changed the next part of our story. I found compromising videos with an ex-boyfriend recorded before our marriage. During the months when we were speaking about a future, she hadn't told me about them. There was no crime in the legal sense, but it was a crime against the picture I had been holding of who we were while we planned to marry. The discovery didn't create a new injury. It multiplied the old one by pushing the timeline backward into a place I had trusted. After that, my mind became a room I didn't know how to leave. Ordinary tasks felt like lifting concrete. I began to have anxiety I'd never known before. Panic didn't ask permission. It arrived like weather I couldn't predict. I followed her to the office once, then again, just to make sure she wasn't meeting that colleague. I checked her phone more than once and hated myself afterward for doing it. Every small delay looked like a signal. Every pause in a chat felt like a sentence I couldn't finish reading. Suspicion is a heavy thing to carry. It makes even water feel like it weighs more than it did yesterday. I kept trying to talk to myself the way a friend would. Breathe. Eat. Step outside and feel heat on your face. Remember that one event shouldn't own every hour. But then the film would start playing behind my eyes again. At work, my concentration thinned. I answered people with half a sentence, while the other half continued arguing with a version of the past that wouldn't sit still. I told myself that forgiveness is valuable, but it is not a duty you owe to a person who refuses to carry their share of the work. Eventually, I realized I could not continue like that and still be a person I recognized. I spoke to her father and said I believed separation would be kinder than pretending to reconcile. I didn't ask for a public apology or money or a dramatic scene in front of relatives. I asked for an end without cruelty, for room to breathe. He did not accept it. He became angry. He said ugly things about me and about my family. He asked for my salary slip. He accused me of lying about my income during the marriage talks. It felt as though the issue had been turned inside out until the person who had been injured was put on trial for being injured the wrong way. Soon after, with her father's support, she unfollowed me on social media and followed the colleague again. I stared at my phone as if the screen might explain itself. A small digital action can speak louder than a room full of conversations. It wasn't proof of anything new. It was a sign that the road back to each other had narrowed to nothing. Some endings announced themselves with shouting. Ours announced itself with a tap of a screen and the sound of nothing happening after. It has been more than 2 months since we began living separately. We do not speak. We do not argue. We do not exchange messages about bills or belongings. Silence has its own vocabulary. It says there is nothing left to say that will move us closer instead of further apart. The apartment is quieter than I remember, and sometimes I mistake that quiet for peace. Then night arrives, and with it the old questions that walk around in circles until they make grooves in the floor. Did I make the right decision? Should I have waited longer? Should I have been stronger? There isn't a correct number of days that proves you tried hard enough. Some mornings I feel relief when I notice I made my tea and didn't think about any of this for half an hour. Other nights I lie awake and look at the ceiling until it becomes a map of roads I didn't take. I wonder why she married me if she was already half out the door. I wonder if I confused calm with love because calm was what I understood. People talk about arranged marriage as though it is either a cage or a guarantee. It is neither. It is a structure that 2 families hope will hold 2 people steady while they learn to be themselves together. The structure doesn't fail in a single day, and it doesn't save you in a single day either. It is work. It is also faith faith that the person across from you is speaking the same language of responsibility you are. When one of you begins to speak a different language and pretends it is the same, the sentences stop meaning the same thing, even if the words look familiar. I don't blame a culture for the decisions two individuals made. I don't blame love for the way we used it. But I have learned that optimism without boundaries is not kindness. It is permission for harm to repeat itself. When someone shows you that a promise feels optional to them, you cannot hold it together by yourself simply by wishing harder. There is a difference between privacy and secrecy. Privacy is a closed door you both agreed should be closed. Secrecy is a closed door someone hides behind while telling you the room is empty. I'm trying to own my decision without turning it into a story, where I'm either a hero or a fool. On most days I am just a man who tried, who broke, and who is learning how to stand up again without explaining every bruise. I'm learning the rhythm of grief, shock, anger, bargaining, sadness, numbness, and the small, rare moments of calm that arrive like a glass of water after heat. I remind myself that suspicion is not a lifestyle, following someone is not love. Checking a phone is not the same as building trust. These reminders are not slogans. They are instructions I repeat to myself quietly when the house is still. The practical aftermath would look boring from the outside. I wake, I cook, I answer emails, I do my job. In the evening I return to a room that is quieter than it used to be. I put my phone on the desk and let it be just a phone. Some evenings I walk without a destination, past the same vegetable stalls I visited for years. At home I write down 3 ordinary things that were not painful that day, a call with a colleague that felt normal, a meal that tasted like food and not like a memory, sunlight on the floor for a full minute before I thought about anything else. These are not victories, but they are repairs. If you have ever tried to stitch a tear in fabric, you know the first passes are clumsy. The thread pulls wrong, the edges refuse to meet. If you keep your hand steady, the fabric holds. It may never look new again. It does not need to. It only needs to be strong enough to carry weight. I tell myself that I don't have to be new. I only have to become strong enough to carry my own weight again without collapsing under stories that are no longer mine. When I look back now, I try not to rewrite the order of events to flatter myself or to condemn her beyond what happened. It was an arranged marriage. We spoke for 6 months. We married. 10 days later, she had a physical relationship with a colleague during lunch. 5 days after that, I found the video. She denied it and called it the past. She said he was an ex. She said I had no right to look. She said I was overreacting and that marriages survive worse. Later, she admitted the truth. I left. I informed her parents. She asked for another chance. I stayed away for a month. I returned with a boundary: leave the job. She agreed, then delayed. First 2 months for notice, then 3 months to complete 2 years. I found old videos in cloud storage with an ex from the months we were speaking. I slid into anxiety and depression. I followed her to the office. I checked the phone. I spoke to her father and asked for a peaceful separation. He insulted me and my family, demanded my salary slip, accused me of lying. She unfollowed me and followed the colleague again. We separated. We have lived apart for more than 2 months. I still have panic attacks. I feel stuck and lost. That is what happened. Saying it simply helps me accept that I did not imagine it. It also helps me see that once we began to live in different versions of the truth, no single conversation could bring us back to the same room. There is a kind of damage that doesn't shout, it erodes. You look up one day and realize that even the good memories have been repainted in new colors, and you are tired of arguing with paint. If there is a lesson for me, it is not to become harder, but to become clearer. Clear about what respect looks like. Clear about what accountability sounds like. Clear about the difference between an apology and a strategy to move past consequences. Clear about the kind of partner I hope to be, and the kind of promises I can no longer pretend are whole when they are not. I can't control another person's choices. I can only decide which choices I'm willing to live beside without losing myself. I don't want pity. I don't want a chorus cheering that I left or condemning me because I tried to stay. I want a record of what happened and of what it felt like to live through it. Maybe one day I'll look back and see this as the beginning of something steadier. For now, it's simply the truth: a man who tried to reconcile, who learned that trying alone is not the same as healing together, and who is walking forward anyway, one plain, ordinary day at a time.